Mr. Harris here, and welcome to a new video. In this video, we're going to talk about ions. So ions, they are formed when an atom loses or gains one or more electrons. So electrons are the main focus here. For ions, it is only to deal with electrons, not protons, not neutrons, but electrons. Ions would carry charges. That means you'll either see a positive charge or you'll see a negative charge. So let's see some examples. The first type of ion is called a cation. Now, cations are what we call positive ions. This happens when an atom loses electrons. When you lose an electron, we get a cation. Cations, as I mentioned, they're positively charged. So what actually happens? Let's look at a situation here. So we have a normal sodium atom. This is sodium atom. It has 11 protons and 11 electrons. Now imagine one electron is lost. Okay, one electron goes away, one electron runs away. Now when one electron runs away, look at the number of electrons now. From 11, now it's become 10. Now if I were to ask you, what's the overall charge now? So protons here, as we know, it's a positive charge, right? Electrons, we have learned that they're negative charge. So for a sodium atom, their overall charge was 0. That's why on the top over here, you don't see anything. But how about for a sodium ion? Now let me write that down. That's a sodium ion over here. This is sodium ion. And maybe I'll write the sodium atom a bit better. This is sodium atom. Now for a sodium atom, look at the number of protons. The number of protons is 11. Let's add the let's say that it's positive 11 because I know protons are positively charged. How about electrons now? The electrons are negatively charged. But what's the overall charge? Do you see the overall charge now is positive 1? Now, because the overall charge is positive 1, I'm going to write that to represent this ion here. So it's a positive 1 charge, so I'm going to write positive there. I can write positive 1 here. I can write 1 positive here. When we write it on the top, it's flipped. Okay, but just like in math, we don't really write the 1. It looks kind of weird, so we ignore the 1. So that's the meaning of an ion, when you have some extra charge left behind. So here, remember in the definition we saw ions would carry charges. Now that's what I mean. That is what this statement means here. Okay, another thing to mention is that earlier I said cations, they're positively charged, right? How so a cation, that's a more chemical term, sounds more cool. And an easy way to remember it is, for example, cats, right? They like to eat fishes. Now imagine this is a dead fish, and do you see the positive charge? You see the positive in the middle. So this over here could help you remember that it's because of this cat that ate this dead fish. So there you go. You will not remember. Now you'll not forget that cations, they're positively charged. On the other hand, what happens when you gain an electron? Okay, this is when an atom gains electrons. Now, anions is what we call negative ions. These are negative ions. They are negatively charged, and this happens when they accept an electron to them. Okay, for example, let's look at an example here. Chlorine, we have an example of chlorine atom over here. So let's write it on the top right here. This is chlorine atom. Now, let's do the same thing what we did on the previous slide. The next other one is called a chloride ion. Okay, now here there's a bit of a special name to it. Now for anions, that means for negative ions, their name changes a bit. For some of them, they end they will end with IDE. Now we'll learn that a bit more in chemistry in senior form, but for now let's just follow this. So the number of protons is 17 originally in the chlorine atom. So, and as we know, proteins, they are positively charged. Electrons, they're negatively charged, so it's 0. Chloride ion here, let's look at chloride ion. The number of protons is 17. So let's add the charge for it. It's plus 17. For electrons, now there's one extra electron that has been gained, right? This is negatively charged, negative 18. What's plus 17 minus plus negative 18? You'll see that it's negative 1. Just like in the previous one, we'll add it up here. Supposedly it should be 1 negative. When we write it on the top, it gets flipped, but we do not write the 1 because it looks weird, so we leave it as negative there. So that's the concept of an ion. For anion, now how do you remember that it's a negative ion? So it sounds like onion, right? And as we know, when you chop onions, they make you cry. So that's kind of negative. So you can also, that could help you remember that. Kind of weird way, but yeah, as long as it works. So here, ions, they carry charges as they have different number of protons and electrons. You notice the number of protons was 17, but the number of electrons has now changed to 18 for an anion. And for the previous example, you see that the number of protons and electrons also change. Okay, so for ions, here they will have different number of protons and electrons. That's the case for ions. Now some of you may wonder why would an atom lose electrons, or why would they gain electrons? Now that's the essence of a chemical reaction. They will lose or gain electrons because of a chemical reaction. That's why it happens. Later on, you'll learn a bit more about it in the coming few chapters or topics. So here, let's write it back. A cation, it is, remember a cat, the dead fish, is positively charged. It is formed when an atom, now when an atom, do you think does it lose or gain an electron? Because electrons are originally negatively charged, how does the atom become more positive? It becomes more positive because it has more protons, right? When it has more protons, that means the electrons have left. So when an atom loses electrons. So cation, it has more protons. And on the other hand, an anion, how for that? Anion, remember onions make you cry. So it is negatively charged. It is formed when an atom, now for this one, because it's negatively charged, how do you get an ion to be negatively charged? You get it negatively charged if you have more electrons present. Now, if more electrons have been present, it means you have accepted more electrons. So it is formed when an atom gains one or more electron. Okay? So now let's wrap it up by seeing how we can write the symbols of ions. Now these are for cations meaning the positively charged ions. So it's very simple. You see the charge on the left, right? You're just going to add it back to the atomic symbol that you have learned in the previous topics. So the atomic symbol of hydrogen is H, and you're going to write the charge on it. Now usually, as I told you, you're going to flip it, right? You're going to write it 1 plus, but you do not write the 1 because it looks weird, so you're just going to leave it as plus. Potassium, the atomic symbol is K, you add the plus. Silver, the symbol is Ag, so you add back the plus. That's how you do it. Calcium here, you write the symbol is Ca. Now remember, the charge is +2 now. It's a bit different. And you remember to flip it. So you're going to flip it. So the charge is going to be 2 plus. Perfect. Zinc, Zn 2 plus. And the last one, aluminium, Al 3 plus. for this. And for anions, the same thing. This is for negatively charged ions. First one, you have bromide ion. This is an anion of bromine. Do you notice that the name has changed a bit? It's IDE, 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 IDE here from the original name of that element. So it's a bit different for anions. We'll learn that later. Bromine is Br, and the charge is negative. Iodine or iodide ion would become I minus. And the next one, sulfur, which is sulfide ion here, S. Remember, now the number, you got to flip it with the charge. So it's S2 minus. Remember to flip it here. And the last one, you have nitride ion, which would be N3 minus. Yep. So there you have it. That's how you can find the symbols of ions. Okay, so that's a wrap for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.